Hello, my name is Larry Cloth. I'm a student at Calumet College of St. Joseph, and I will be talking for a few minutes about the use of diagnostic assessment in education. The term diagnostic assessment is used to describe a number of assessment tools designed to gather information on students' previous knowledge of a subject, but also to determine what learning issues students might have. As with all forms of assessment, data from diagnostic assessment should be used by teachers to shape instruction as the needs, strengths, and weaknesses of students are taken into account. It can affect how an entire curriculum is delivered to an entire class, or it can focus on the needs of only some of the students. There are various forms of diagnostic assessment. Some familiar ones are the published standardized tests that are common in classrooms today. These can be pencil and paper tests, they can be computer-based, or they can include one-on-one verbal interactions with the students. Diagnostic assessments can also be in the form of tests the teachers themselves create for their classes, or they can be built into some formal curriculum materials, which allow the teacher to have an assessment at the beginning of a unit and then at the end to assess development. The major focus of much of diagnostic testing is on language and math skills, and this is not unusual considering the general focus on those subjects today. But I think it's also significant because language and math skills are process-oriented as opposed to subject-oriented. Development in language skills is the foundation for all other learning. Development in math is important because math is taught and learned sequentially, and steps that go unlearned or insufficiently learned can cause difficulties in learning other elements of math down the line. What kind of data do we get from diagnostic testing? Well, published standardized tests tend to break the subjects down into skill-related subsets and then give data on how a student performs in each one of them. Data will be provided on how an individual student's performance matches with his or her classmates, or with other students who have taken the test both within the same school or in other schools, including all other students who have taken the test. The data may also be sorted into other categories, such as these, giving these that are listed here, raw scores, progress indicators, scaled scores, etc. And this gives the teacher the ability to examine the data from different statistical points of view. Some other forms of diagnostic assessment may include computer-based programs that provide questions based upon the pattern of a student's responses. For example, an incorrect answer will result in another similar kind of question at the same level, whereas a correct answer will result in a more challenging question. This kind of test will give a highly individualized assessment, and which may be useful in seeing how one particular student is doing, but is not useful in comparing that one student to everyone else, since everyone else is pretty much taking different tests. There's also one-on-one verbal diagnostic assessments, which may be useful in that they measure things that a written test cannot, such as verbal responses, use of language, the mood of the student, or even the thinking processes a student uses in responding. What does diagnostic assessment measure and what doesn't it measure? Well, diagnostic assessment, properly understood, will indicate areas where the students have strengths and weaknesses. It does not indicate the underlying causes of the weakness, such as physical, mental, emotional, linguistic, or cognitive problems, and these are best analyzed by other forms of assessment. How does diagnostic assessment influence instruction? Initial diagnostic assessment can provide the teacher a baseline of performance by students and by the class as a whole. Subsequent testing may show any change in performance. Depending on the data, the teacher will need to tailor instruction to meet the needs of students with difficulties, or perhaps even reshape it for the entire class. Some strategies for individuals can include pairing with stronger students, pull-out sessions, more individualized attention, and in more severe cases, IEPs or special education intervention. There are some limits that have come up in looking at diagnostic assessment as it's been used over the years. The use of diagnostic assessment tools necessarily has led to some kind of focus on their limitations. There has been some concern about the reliability and validity of some tests. For example, there are the questions of, are they testing what has been taught? Do they provide enough questions and the right kind of questions to provide a large enough sample of responses needed for meaningful results? Some tests have been criticized as providing lots of data, but no suggested plan forward that teachers can use to remedy the problems. Some results can be skewed by the stress of test taking or by not being able to tell that a student knows the material but just works more slowly, or by students simply not taking the test seriously. And some tests have been criticized for not taking into account the diversity of cultural issues and learning styles in the classrooms. So in conclusion, what would be the best use of diagnostic assessment? I think diagnostic assessment is a useful tool for getting a snapshot of the abilities of students so that a teacher may better know how to work with them. I think it can be very useful in getting more attention and intervention to those who need it. But I do not think that the results of diagnostic assessment should be considered alone, but rather in the context of the ongoing assessment that teachers and other educational professionals perform as they interact with their students.